I'm Dave,
And I'm Bill.
and we're Giant Slayer Consultants. And we have been doing the 21 Laws of Leadership about a half an hour each Thursday at noon. We want to thank you for tuning in. Some of you have been tuned in more than once, and we try to do this at lunchtime where most people can kind of pull their smartphone up and follow along. But we would love it if you'd send us your comments, your ideas, your thoughts. Reach out to us. This has been a great series, and we're going to do it again. Here in a few weeks, we're going to kick off this again. We're going to run through it once a week for 21 Laws, so that those who have not heard it or had been a part of it can actually get this information. So tell your friends if you've enjoyed this. Get the word out for us and help us to share this teaching. Now, today's law is the law of legacy. It all boils down to legacy, doesn't it?
It does.
And we can do a lot of things in life, but and be very successful. But if we leave an organization or just leave planet Earth, and nobody can really see our footprint, where we've been and what we've done, where we've passed it on to other people, then sometimes our legacy goes with us, doesn't it? And that's not what we want to do. Everything we do, especially when we're doing things that we hope will matter, we have to have this in line. Who's going to do it after I leave? If it's important enough for me to do, then it's probably important enough for somebody else to do. So to kick off, we just want to, for those who haven't been with us before, Bill, just kind of briefly tell us a little bit about the 5 levels of leadership. Take us from production or from a position up to the top.
Well, our leadership is in 5 levels, and it starts out with level 1 or position, and that's where you have the title, and maybe you have the authority, but you don't necessarily have the skills, and you don't necessarily have people following you.
Yeah,
you have people following your directions.
And sometimes that relates to just being a parent. When you have a child, you have a position of authority and responsibility by default, don't you?
Yes.
So sometimes those things just happen. Sometimes we get promoted.
And we're going to, sometime we're going to be in a position where there are people that we hope will listen to us.
Yeah.
And to get beyond that, we get to a level of permission where people give us permission to lead them, and they will go along with us because they know that we have the good for the whole, the larger good in mind.
And that's when you really start leading in it. When people give you start to influence their decisions, you start to impact their thinking and their behavior. They start to move. And
because they're following us, then they're not necessarily just following our instructions.
Right. They're not doing what they're told. They're starting to rely on us. Yeah.
And then the next level is production, and that's where we get the team together and the team starts getting results.
Yeah.
But it's all focused on results here.
Yeah.
And then it moves up to people development, and that's where we develop other leaders, and we develop the key leaders in the organization so that we will be able to step away or step up to another level.
If we're gonna really grow an organization, we've got to empower the people, don't we? We've got to start developing people.
That's right.
And this is where legacy starts to come in too, doesn't it? We start moving up to this 5th level. We're really talking about how do we remembered by those when we leave.
And then it goes to level 5, which is personhood, and this is kind of a level that not a lot of people get to.
Yeah.
And what happens there is we're just developing the organization. We're developing ourselves. We're growing. We're bringing people up with us. It's like that rising tide raising all the boats. We're bringing people up, and we're succeeding, and we're helping people succeed, and that is what is causing us to succeed.
Yeah, I like that analogy, raising the tide. All the boats come up.
Yeah,
and that's what a level 5 leader does. They raise all the boats. We're taking the organization higher because we're taking you as the leaders higher.
Mm-hmm.
And this pinnacle, this personhood leader, is remembered not by just what they did, but the leaders remember this person for what he or she did for them to help them get to that place. So it's all about investing in the people. So we start out with position. We're struggling. We're just trying to get by, and we grow from permission all the way up to this personhood level. And it takes work. It takes intentionality if we're ever going to leave a legacy. And that's what our lesson's about today. Bill, we've done 20 lessons so far, and we started out with the law of the lid. We talked about that our leadership level determines the effectiveness or the ability for the organization to grow. And if we're just an average leader, then the team is going to be average or below. It's going to be like that lid sitting right here, and all the folks and everything in the organization's bumping their head, trying to get you to move out of the way or grow up so they can grow. And if we don't raise our lid, a couple things happen. People sometimes just give up and they quit, but they stay.
They say.
They just take up space. Or if it's someone who has a real purpose and trying to move forward in life, they'll go around us or leave us. So we always want to raise our lid, not so we stay ahead of people, but so we're always setting the example to challenge people to grow. And then the law number 2, do you remember what law 2 was, Bill?
That's the law of influence.
That's what this is all about.
That's what leadership is, influence.
Yeah.
Nothing more.
Nothing less. So if we're not influencing people, then we're not really leading. We can be the boss and not really be the leader. And I've been in those positions where I've got a title and a position and come find out that some folks on the team had more influence than I did. And I would take the team this way and the team would go this way because they weren't really listening to me. So I had to develop relationships and learn to grow with the team and get them to trust me and get them to believe in the vision of what we were doing to get them to move forward. And I really had to develop relationships with those influencers.
Yeah.
Because that's what it's all
Because they're
about.
going to be the leaders.
Yeah.
Then we do the laws in 3 parts. We learn the law, and that's how does it work? What is the law all about?
Yeah.
And then how do we live the law? Back to the law of the picture. If we're not doing what we say, we're teaching something else.
Yeah.
So, if we want to show people how to, how these laws work, we've got to live them.
Got to live these examples, don't we?
Be the example. And then it's leading others to the law. And that's growing the leaders around us, adding value to other people so that we can give them, lead them to the law by add that value to them so that we can add value to the organization.
So 3 phases: we learn it, we live it, and we lead it. And remember, lead is influence. And you can't skip it and go to the 3rd part without learning about it and living it out, because it all depends on their influence. So people do what they see, not always what they hear, don't they, Bill? So, Bill, on this first phase, which is learning the law of legacy, why don't you tell us a little bit about learning about it? And this chapter was a short chapter in the book, but it was a power-packed chapter.
Yeah, it's really this chapter bookends with is finishing it the way that the law of the lid kind of bookends the beginning of it.
Yeah, that's you're so right. Yeah.
But learning the law, a leader's lasting value is determined by succession, and that's by what follows after it. And legacy is created only when people put their organization into the position to do great things without them.
Yeah.
One of the important things that I think about with legacy and leaders is we always have presidents. Look what George Washington left.
Yeah.
And he set he had leaders around him, and all the founding fathers. I don't know that George Washington was the leader of the founding fathers, but there were enough leaders there who left leaders, grew up leaders around them, and set up structures that could carry on and succeed after they passed through this life.
Yeah, I'm not a historian, but a lot of those founding fathers chose him to lead them.
Yeah.
And people, and that's what about. If people don't choose to let us lead, we don't really lead them,
Yeah.
do we?
And it's not necessarily George Washington, but that group,
Yeah.
of leaders.
I think that's an interesting point to break out, that they chose this man to lead. He was a natural born leader, so they chose to follow him, and they got behind him.
Yeah.
Now, that's what real influence is, isn't it?
That is.
Yeah.
And when we retire, move on. When you retire, move on. What do you want others to say about you as a person? And how the time you spend in the organization, and what you did for them. And that's kind of like the dash on the tombstone.
Yeah.
Born 1960, dash, died whatever year. Well, what does that dash? What was in between those two? That dash has got to have some bones and meat to it.
Some of you may have done this too. I've walked through graveyards and cemeteries before, and I'm just reading the names and see if I recognize anybody. And I would see that little dash. And ever since this person that brought this up, told a little story about the dash, I look at that dash differently. I'm thinking, this person lives 70, 80 years, and this is all I know about this person right here. I wonder what that dash really says about this person. How did they live their life? How did they end their life? And that dash says a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah. And, we talk about, like, the founding fathers and the legacy that they left. But, we can, even in our more mundane things in our lives, we can apply this.
Yeah.
It's like, a couple years ago, I was asked to do lights here at the church, and you take over that.
Hmm.
And I kind of learned how to do it. And, I could go in and do it, and I could set it up, and I could think, well, anytime they need to set up, I'll go in and do it. But instead, I've tried to get, Dara Wickline to come in, teach him how, okay, this is how you adjust these things. So if I'm not there, for whatever reason, there's someone that knows how to set this up. And if they need to adjust it, rather than just set it the way we had it before, if they need to make adjustments and customize it,
Yeah.
he can go in there and do that. And I don't have to be there to hold someone's hand through that process.
And that's what the reality of the life is. As a young person, and even as a young leader, sometimes we're just so busy trying to survive that we don't think about what's going to happen if I'm not there. And, really, you can be a great producer, but if you don't have a system set up and an intentional plan to build that sustainability in there, that after you're gone, it's really failure. It is really a failure. I've seen ministries, great people follow, a great amount of people follow a certain leader, but something happens to this leader's life, they have to leave, and the congregation shrinks down to nothing. It's just like an accordion, back and forth, looking for that leader. And what's happened there is, while that leader was in place, they didn't take time and effort to build the leadership in there so that if they stepped out, they would keep growing. So a lot of them died off, ministries have.
Yeah.
Same way with companies. If we don't have some kind of sustainability plan in place, with intentionality, raising up other leaders, after you're gone, it's going to leave.
Yeah.
And it's sad, it really is, because there's some great organizations and businesses that have went out of business because they didn't have that plan.
Yeah, I think there's a great example in the book with Mother Teresa, how she's left a legacy of leaders, and they're still bringing new converts into, or new nuns into her order, the order that she founded.
Yeah. So she had a plan.
She had a plan.
She realized how important it was that it continue on after she's gone.
Yeah,
so
because
she
100
realized,
people are still going to be there.
Yeah, they realized that she realized this is bigger than me.
Yeah.
And sometimes leader doesn't realize that. We get it's all about me, what I can do, what I can provide, and become dependent on the people and their affirmation to make us feel better. But then when we get tired and we start to slow down and we look around and we don't have the energy and the zeal that we used to have, it starts to dwindle. So it's very important. What else you got, Bill?
Well, then that kind of goes into, Eleanor Roosevelt had a great quote in there. It says, life's like a parachute jump. You got to get it right the first time.
So you better pack that thing right and check it
pack
out.
it right. So, and that's, the thing about, getting our legacy in there.
Yeah.
Is if we don't get it, we only have one chance to get it right in the big picture. We've got a lot of little, we can always start afresh every day.
Yeah.
But, at some point, we're going to either have done it or not.
Yeah. Yeah. Time goes by faster than what we realize, and it can get away from us. So we should start today, shouldn't we? We shouldn't wait till tomorrow. All right. Now we've learned a little bit about it here. We've learned about the importance of it. Let's talk a little bit about living it out. Okay. So there are 4 disciplines to develop to leave the legacy that you desire.
Mm-hmm.
There's all kinds of plans and systems, but we got to have a plan. You got to start somewhere. I like what Wigglesworth told someone sometime. They didn't like how he did ministry, and he looked at him and he says, "Well, what's your plan?" I said, "Well, I don't have a plan." He said, "Well, I like mine better." So sometimes plans are better than others, but you got to have a plan. So I'm going to share with you these 4 disciplines that you can use. The first thing is know the legacy you want to leave. When you're 20 years old, you don't know what kind of legacy you want to leave most of the time. Sometimes when you're 30, you don't. Sometimes when you're 40, you don't. But I think you better start figuring it out.
Yeah.
Because that hourglass runs a little faster when you get to that 40 mark, doesn't it? Time just goes by so fast, it seems to be. So it's never too early, and it's never too late, really. It doesn't matter how you came in this world. It matters how you go out. And
so it's like a Chinese proverb, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago.
Yeah.
The second best time is today.
Yeah.
So, if we want to start that legacy, that tree of
Yeah.
legacy,
Yeah.
and we haven't, we can always do it today.
And it's funny because I remember, I bought some property in Quinwood, and I kept saying I'm gonna plant some apple trees. I'm gonna plant some grape and get me a little grape vineyard going. And then one year would roll by, the next year would roll by, next year would roll by, and I'm always gonna do it next year. And never did plant them. If I planted those 20 years ago, I'd be
Yeah.
eating apples off those trees, eating grapes off of those vines. So my son's living on the property now. I need to tell him to plant a donut so he can eat off of it 20 years from now. So the first thing is know the legacy you want to leave. The second thing is live the legacy you want to leave. And we talked about it just a second ago. You kind of model it out, know what you want, and then start living it out. Move forward with it. The third thing is choose who you want to carry on your legacy. You got to start looking.
Yeah.
It's not always the person that you hope it would be, but you got to start looking for that person that it should be. And we can't make people do what we want, but we have to inspire them, let them know that this is very important, and get them to buy into the vision so that they want to carry it on. And then the fourth thing is pass the baton to them. Start to let them lead. Don't micromanage them. Don't just empower them. Let them make the mistakes, but hand them the baton and let them begin to lead in those areas and mentor them. And I like what John says in this book. He says most people accept their life rather than lead it. We have this fatism or fatalism mentality that we think fate has dealt us this card in this hands. Stuff happens. Life is never perfect, but it is real important to know that we have the power to make choices, and we have the power to take control back over our lives. But it really takes taking control of our thought life, empowering ourselves, and begin to grow, and things will begin to change.
Well, that's the only thing we truly have control of.
Yeah.
Is what we think and how we act on that.
What we choose to think about. Yeah. All right. Now, Bill, tell us a little bit about leading others to the law.
Okay, you lead others to the law by empowering and training them how to carry on and do without you there. It's kind of like when people are living the law, it comes in 4 steps. Their achievement is when they do things on their own. And then their success is when they empower people to do things for them.
Mm-hmm.
Significance is when they get people that will do things with them.
Yeah.
But legacy is when they get people that can do things after they're gone.
Yeah.
So, if you hear statements like, if I train someone what to do what I might want to, what I do, I might work myself out of a job. Well, that's kind of the point, is eventually work yourself out of a job, because everyone wants to retire. They want to be promoted, or they want to go on to something new.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you don't want to grow and you want to stay where you're at forever, you might work yourself out of a job. Most people want to do something new.
This is so powerful. We can't really, move on past this thought for a minute till we really drill this down, because this is critical for everybody. We all have a little fear of not being needed or wanted. And if we're not growing and really seeing our true value and not moving forward, we can get stuck in this place where we want to settle in. I don't want anybody to take my job or my place. I want to feel valued. I want to be the one who people depend on, but not too much, because I don't want to work too hard. And we can get stuck there and have that mentality is, if I train this person to do this as well as I do, they're not going to need me as much. I'm not going to be as valuable to the team. So we withhold information, we withhold knowledge, and we withhold training sometimes to protect ourselves in that security place, because we all have a need for security. Now, it's a complete mindset flip. We have to realize that I don't need to stay here. I need to move forward. That there really is no such thing as security.
Right.
It's
illusion.
It's an illusion. The company can go under tomorrow. And if we haven't grown ourselves and been a people developer, and I go to a new employer, what am I going to tell them I've done? I've done the same thing for 10 years, 20 years, and never moved past that spot. Why? If I'm not going to hire you, that's what I'm going to ask them. Why did you stay there? Why did you not grow?
And a lot of times that's because we can't control what happens around us, but that's our way of trying to control it.
Yeah.
If we withhold information, we try to control the situation so that people still need us to do things for them. And it's kind of a, false, like you said, it's a false security. It's an illusion of
It's
security
an illusion, yeah.
because we're not really needed. We're just kind of worming our way in there and grading ourselves on the situation.
And I will share a little story about, when I moved from clerk role when I got promoted into the management role, and I had to go for an interview. Went through 3 different interviews, and you had to take some testing and whatever. But got down to that 3rd interview, and the company didn't normally hire people who didn't have a bachelor's degree, or hold a certain type of position in the company. I had neither one, but I was doing okay on the first couple of interviews. But it come down to this 3rd one, and she asked me a question. She said, "Can you tell me of a situation where you've helped somebody inside your organization?" And it just wasn't too long before that there was this young man who'd been overlooked for promotions and moved into a position for about 5 years. Well, I went to bat for him, and I stood up for him, and then I helped him as he got into that position, kind of mentored him. She came back and told me, she said, "That's the reason I'm promoting you." She said, "You did okay. You didn't do a whole lot better than some of these other folks." She said, "But I had some reservations because of your education and your experience." She said, "But it tells me that you care about lifting other people up and helping them." And she says, "I don't even know who the guy is." She said, "But you were passionate about that when you told me that story, that you helped him to move forward." And she said, "That's the reason I'm giving you the job." So it just came to me as we talked about this. And that's how important it is to be a people lifter.
Yeah.
And I didn't do it to get a promotion. This was, some time by. I wasn't even thinking about being promoted at the time. But as a characteristic that I realized was important, but it really got me the job. And it changed my life. So think about it. Who are you investing in and being intentional about?
Another thing we need to listen for, as well as, if I train someone to do this, I might work myself out of a job, is kind of a mirror image of that. Is, do you ever want to move on or maybe apply for a promotion, but you can't get it because you're the one that they need to do this?
Yeah.
And if they need you to do it, that means you're not you're not teaching people, lifting them up to be able to fill up. You're not empowering them.
These 2 thought lines are perfect.
Yeah, they're mirror images.
They're perfect examples, and I like that analogy of mirror images because this is what it is. I don't want to train anybody because I'm not going to tell you that, but subconsciously, I don't want to train anybody because I'm afraid you're going to replace me. But then when it comes time and I need a week's vacation to be off on this weekend and nobody's trained, you're stuck.
Yeah.
And I had a situation like this too, where I had some folks who had a lot of vacation time, and it come down to they all kind of wanted the same week. So I'm like, I can't let you go. Well, why not? Because I need trained, seasoned people here to run this store while you're gone. And if it's not there, so I began to limit vacations until they got people trained, and then they saw the value of it.
Yeah.
The pressure came off, and the team began to grow. So that's I love this right here. It's great illustration of how the mind really works when we feel like we're stuck. Tell us what Jackie Robinson says.
Yeah, Jackie Robinson's quote is, "Life isn't significant except for its impact on others' lives." So, it doesn't matter what you build or how much you learn. If someone doesn't benefit from that, what's it worth?
Yeah.
I mean, it'll never be thought of or spoken of again.
We talk about our successes forever, and then you tell people who got stuck.
Mm-hmm.
The quarterback who hasn't done anything except be the starting quarterback 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And has never done anything significant since then. They got stuck in a immaturity level there where they didn't really realize the importance of continuing to grow and lift other people up. So if we can look back and see where we've actually had a hand in someone else moving forward and growing, the first place we look at as a parents are children. If you can look and see some progress in those, and you can take satisfaction that you've helped sow that in there. They're not perfect. They're never going to be perfect. But you can see that you've planted something in them. Now, we look back on our teams, whether it's a ministry team, a business team, a community team. If I can look where I've sowed something into somebody and they've grown, and I know I had a part of that, that to me is significant. Now, if I'm out here doing it myself, that's success, personal success, isn't it? So to move from success to significance, we have to invest in people, though.
That's right.
It's got to impact people's lives. And that's what Jackie was saying there. That's what matters is when we impact lives. Jackie Robinson's life impacted others, didn't it?
Yeah, and you know, I'm not a baseball fan. I don't know what Jackie Robinson batted, but I know that he broke the race barrier in
Yeah,
professional baseball.
absolutely.
And only I know that because other people were able to play Major League Baseball because of him.
Which was spread out into other sports.
Yeah.
And so what he did mattered. And, he didn't start out to break the race barrier.
Started
He
out
started out
playing
playing
baseball.
baseball, didn't he? But as it went on, he had a choice. He could stop and move on, avoid the persecution and ridicule, or stick it out for people that's coming behind him. He
Mhm.
chose that.
Yeah.
He actually chose that. So he chose to not only maybe put his personal success aside, but to do something that was significant for people like him coming after him. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about the action plan before we let you go. And first thing I would suggest is take a few minutes and write out your eulogy. What do you want that eulogy to sound like? If someone was going to talk about you after you're gone, what would you hope they would say about you? What did you do for them? And that's powerful. I've heard some powerful eulogies where people would tell things that happened 30, 40 years ago that they had impacted their lives from that point forward. And that's what we want. So identify what you want it to sound like. What do you do next, Bill?
You write out your life sentence, and that's something. It's a process. You're not just going to write out a life sentence today, and you're going to write it. You're going to edit it, and it's going to get bigger, and it's going to gain clarity.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like exploring your purpose. And a lot of people just accept what life, like you were talking about earlier, accept what life gives them.
Yeah.
They're fatalistic about it. They don't really lead a life. They don't sit down and, okay, this is where I'm going with my life.
The author of the book, John Maxwell, gives a great illustration of this. He said, when he first got out of college, his number one thing was he wanted to be a great pastor. Just want to be a great pastor because that's what he was going to do. Then as he began to pastor, he realized that he needed to learn how to communicate better. So his life sentence was, I want to be a great communicator. And then it moved to, I want to be a great writer. And then I want to be a great leader. And then I want to empower leaders. So his life sentence changed as his phases went through. So if you're young and you're starting out, you might want to be a great teacher. You might want to be a great mechanic. You might want to be a great speaker. But that'll change as you continue to grow because your world expands, your skills will improve, and your life sentence will change. But write it out. What do you want to be today? What do you want to be tomorrow? So that means begin living it out today, doesn't it, Bill?
It does.
Just don't wait till tomorrow. I love that thing with, it's not in the a quote you talk about doing. You remember what it was?
If you're not doing what you're teaching something else.
Yeah, yeah. So what's the next thing we do after we begin living it out today?
And living it out, you make a list of people that you want to empower to carry on in your absence.
Yeah.
Because we can't always be everywhere at once.
Yeah.
But we want things to carry on the way we would like to see them carry on when we're not there.
And I know there's probably some folks out there saying, I want to help people, but I can't get them to listen to me. They won't hear what I got to say. Is it their fault that they won't listen to you?
Are you hearing them?
I used to have that. It's like, I want to help them, but nobody will listen to me. And I used to think they were stubborn or they didn't care. But it really boils down to I needed to grow because leadership is influence. If I can't influence them, that tells me I'm not their leader. They haven't given me permission to lead them. So we've got to grow. So if you want to help people, you've got to grow into your legacy. You can't leave a legacy with people as far as leadership and equipping and training people if you don't choose to accept responsibility and ownership of your own personal growth. When you start, it doesn't happen overnight.
No.
And people are not going to start listening to you overnight, but they're going to watch you. They're going to watch how you learn. They're going to watch how you live it out. And then you can they'll allow you to lead them. So train and equip people today when you can, and think about tomorrow in 5 years and beyond after you're gone. That's how you create significance and leave a legacy. Well, that's today's lesson, Bill,
It is.
and it's been great. We've changed our format a few times and our streaming devices. We finally settled on one here that seems to be working. But I'm going to have a different talk show soon, coming up 1st of April. I want you to tune in for that too. It'll probably be on a different day. I think it's going to be on Tuesday. And beginning Tuesday on that day, we haven't even found the name for the talk show yet. I'm still working on that, but it will be kicking off at 11 o'clock on Tuesday, April the 3rd, I think it is. And John Parks and I, a pastor from Assemblies of God down the road here, we're going to talk about how to plug the church into the community. Okay, and we're going to use some illustrations from the Church of Irresistible Influence book that we've studied in the past. And so if you know a church leader, a pastor, anybody that's in the congregation that wants to help the churches connect together and then build bridges into the community, put that on your calendar, because that's what we're going to kick off and talk about. And hopefully from week to week, we'll bring in a person to interview on a particular subject or topic, because we got to involve the schools, we got to involve the medical field, we got the business, the political, the government side. We need everybody in the community working together to overcome the problems we have in our society. And I believe the church has the tools and the people to do it, but we got to work together and come together with that. So if you're interested in being a part of that, tune in Tuesday at 11 o'clock. I'll send out a reminder and the actual name of the talk show. Okay, so
Sounds exciting.
We'll be discussing that for a few weeks before we decide on another subject, because we want to we need your voice. We need to hear what your thoughts and ideas are. And when we start to come together and we start to understand and listen to one another, we can solve a lot of these problems. We've got a lot of problems in our society, but I believe God has given us the power to overcome those together. We rely on Him and trust each other and work together. What do you think, Bill?
I think you need to start planting those trees today.
I do too. That's it. We're going to eat that fruit 20 years from now. We need to do it today, don't we? All right. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.